This is a Film Stories original podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Make It So, the Star Trek podcast.
What?
We're talking about Star Trek First Contact, aren't we?
Wow.
Welcome to the Shipwrecked and Comatose Red Dwarf podcast. I am Kurt North. You are Mark Adams.
I am Mark Adams. Hi.
And you are Carl Bryan.
We are Carl Bryan.
Are you 2 of 3, Carl? Is that what I'm saying?
I'm very much 6 of 8.
Mark, if you had to give yourself a numerical number, what would yours be?
6 of 9.
I knew it was going to be that. We are here at Red Dwarf 11. Mark, how do you generally feel about Red Dwarf 11?
I really enjoyed Red Dwarf 11 and I really enjoyed Red Dwarf 10, and it could be that I've only seen it 3 times, but it could also be that people are mean and silly and just, I don't know, maybe they just want stuff like animal cruelty and homophobia in their Red Dwarf.
Was that pointed at me?
No.
Carl, what do you think of Red Dwarf 11? Obviously, you've seen it before, but this was a refresh for you. How did you feel watching it again?
I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the kind of leap up in quality that there is on this series. You can see it from the very beginning. The sets look better. I think everything generally looks better. I think the writing's on point. I think these episodes, especially this one, are very dense. There's a lot going on, but it's not overdone in how much you're trying to get in 25 minutes or whatever it is. Yeah, no, I really enjoyed this series.
I think it's interesting that you were saying about the model shots being CG. I would have expected CG model shots to have been CAC because low budget, it's on Dave, and models are best. I'm begrudgingly really impressed with the CG in this, actually.
I think we've talked about this before, that the technology is catching up now where it's readily available, open source software and things like that. You can mess about and do CG, and it is there if you want to learn it. And I can imagine the budget's not massive on these ones, but I think it is a bit more of an enhanced budget from what it was on Series 10. They've put that in the right places, it looks like here.
One of my notes for this episode, which we will talk about shortly in Star Trek First Contact, Twentica, was actually a really nice dark version of Starbug as they flew away at the very end. The new cockpit and the colour scheme and stuff like that, because it is a vast difference, because we were all reds last season. This has got your blues, it's got your greens, it's got a lot of vibrant primary colours in this season, really.
I loved the sets in Series X, and whilst they didn't need to do anything with them, I also like the sets in Series 11. And then I did make a note about Starbug, actually. They've got a pool table on Starbug now. And that's not how big Starbug was in Series 6. In Series 6, it was implied that it was incredibly cramped. They were desperate to find Red Dwarf because of it, and the kitchen was so limited that they only had Space Weevil. But this has got a pool table on it. But wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey, don't care.
I mean, do they clarify the pool table is on Starbug?
Yeah, it's later in this episode.
Yeah.
The casket of Cronus is used to hold the pool table level.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, I don't know if it specifically says Starbug.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure on that, but it might be that they're just referring to Red Dwarf. I don't know.
I mean, so maybe I've made an assumption here, because a spaceship as big as a planet is likely to have more than one pool table. So if they did have a wonky one, they could move on to the next one.
Takes effort, though, Mark.
It's true, but I assumed it was on Starbug because it was their only pool table.
I honestly, I don't know if it's referred as to being on Starbug, so it could well be. They've played pool with planets before, so I think we'll give them the benefit of the doubt that it's probably that, which was interesting because and Mark is going to hate me for this, I was watching Red Dwarf 8 the other night.
Why bother?
Well, because some of it is really good. Like I've said, so it has some really high highs. You've just got to take the low lows and sometimes just ignore the low lows. I think I messaged on the Facebook group, didn't I, saying that Red Dwarf in Red Dwarf 8 is really long and really thin.
Yes.
And obviously we've got the whole nanobot thing. But then by the time you get to like the Red Dwarf that we see here, which is back to its old kind of fat little self. It's like, in canon, it's interesting where would you get that from? And obviously the ship was being destroyed at the end of 8 as well. So there's a lot of canonical mind trickery that you're going to have to play on yourself to get it to that point. And, maybe Starbug was part of the nanobots redesign, potentially.
There's a whole load of things. There could be a whole other fleet of Starbugs that come with pool tables that we don't know about and all that kind of stuff.
Well, I've been watching the snooker recently. I really want to play snooker again. I haven't played snooker for so many years, and it's like I've really got the bug to I want to go and play snooker. So I would go with pool if I have to. It's not a problem. Enough differing anyway. That we're talking about episode 1 of Red Dwarf 11 XI. It was, depending on when you watched it, on UK TV Play, aired on the 15th of September 2016 and aired on terrestrial stroke pay television Dave on the 22nd of September 2016. So this one, as I've alluded to a couple of times, may have some allusions to certain other franchises. Probably the most overt since Alien and Polymorph, I would say. But what were your initial reactions, Mark, to Twentica?
My initial reaction was, ooh, Simon Quinlank is the Borg.
Fair dues.
Actor Kevin Eldon, and that's me being really obscure. For people who haven't watched Fist of Fun, Kevin Eldon's been in other stuff too, but to me, he'll always be Simon Quinlank from Fist of Fun and This Morning with Richard Not Judy.
I enjoyed this immensely. It's a mini film. You've got the sets of when they go down to the planet, I can't remember what they're called now, but yeah, for lack of a better term, the Dwarf Borg look fantastic. You can see that it is Kevin Eldon, although the first time I watched it, I didn't realize it was Kevin Eldon until about halfway through. I think the acting is spot on.
Oh, he's great.
Yeah.
I'm just a bit perturbed he hasn't got his weak lemon drink.
Well, I think all the actors in this are good. I really enjoyed this episode. It's up there for me at the New Dwarf, just because of how much is going on in it and how good it looks as well. And it's funny.
I mean, Mark, you look at the last episode, which was a very Red Dwarf movie, because it is very Red Dwarf movie, and then you come straight into 11 with a different style of Red Dwarf to most of 10, bar the beginning, and this is more akin to that. I think we'll see through these episodes some really interesting takes. As I say, I've been alluding to it for a long time about the way that they swings and roundabouts. So like this one's a prime example of that, of exactly what Carl said there. It's a mini movie. It is a self-contained little movie. It's got exposition in it. It's got time travel in it. It's got these weird things that are taking over a planet. You've got all this kind of aspect to it and very film-esque. So the swing has started here, and we'll see it, especially next episode, with something we don't really see at all. But what do you make to that, the fact that they have changed it a little bit compared to what 10 was over the course of the season?
It's interesting, the mini movie idea, that if you removed Red Dwarf and just made it a dystopic sci-fi about traveling back in time to stop robots that have ruined history, that's a film I'd watch. It's good to see Simulant's back, but I'm still not sure what Logie is, because he's clearly not a simulant. But these are simulants, but they're a different type of simulant. And Logie looks like them.
They are expanoids.
Yes.
Did we get to the bottom of what Logie actually is and whether he's related to simulants?
I think we did talk about it, but I can't remember what we said.
No.
Yeah, expanoids. So they were just like, they gobble up as much like technology as they can. It's basically is the Borg. I mean, it's going to be impossible not to talk about this episode without talking about Star Trek
but
First
do you
Contact.
But do you feel like the simulants were always the Borg, the way they were portrayed? I think they were
more
pretty
cyborg.
Borgy.
They were cyborg. They weren't really like these expanoids are specifically grabbing stuff and exponentially growing. The Borg were, we will assimilate you. We will take your culture into our own. We will make us bigger and better. We're searching for perfection. These expanoids are, we're going to take as much technology and we're going to expand our technological advances for such and such, which is exactly like the Borg. The cyborgs just hated humans. They just don't like the human race. It's a very kind of different aspect to them.
True.
I mean, that's the
True.
fun thing with a catch-all like a simulant or cyborg is they can be anything you like. You know, they could be, because if they go, well, these aren't the same as the other ones, you go, well, these are from way in the future, and the other ones are from way, way in the future. They're a different evolution of simulant or cyborg or anything like that. It's, it's a good catch-all. I mean, the same as Gelfs, isn't it? You know, Gelf can look like absolutely anything you want it to look like.
There are lots of different types of Gelf, and there's the Kinitawawe. We all know her.
Oh, dear.
I just wanted to say it. I'm sorry. I'm such a fucking child.
Well, put it this way, you're going to be able to get to say it in about, 1, 2, 3, 4 episodes' time.
I am. I'm already excited.
This is it now. We're going to build up to it every single episode, aren't we? Naga! That's it. It's one of the funniest moments in this series. It's brilliant.
It's wonderful.
When we do get the X-Menoids come and they come appear on screen, they're searching for a crewman, David Lister, who's in charge, Rimmer, blah, blah, blah. And obviously the first kind of aspect of them, when you do look at them, you go, oh, they look a little bit bog. But when they start saying, I am combat droid 4 of batch 27, you're kind of going, all right, okay, I can see what they're doing. And then eventually it becomes like 6 of 23 or wherever it was. But this kind of like sort of build up in Starbug with the cat pointing out, it says, that's him right there. And like, they broke me and doing all that kind of thing. And then Lister's negotiation, which...
Oh, wonderful.
I did enjoy that.
I loved it. It was very obvious what he was doing. And even Rimmer spotted it. But it was a really well done gag. And Kat's leopard jacket is just magnificent. And this whole scene, it's just so Red Dwarfy. I felt like I was back in the 90s. There was a laugh track, and the theme tune was obviously the original theme tune. Just this first few minutes really felt like this could have been released in the 90s. It just felt right. It felt Red Dwarfy. And it was clearly done with love. And Rimmer is the most Rimmery ever in this scene. It's just great. And I realise again, my 10 years ago rose-tinted glasses are rose-tinted, but I can see myself enjoying this for a long, long time.
It has been made where it's timeless. You can come back and watch this, and there's a few jokes in it that age it even now. There's the joke about knickknacks, which kind of just shows how old Doug was when he wrote it, I think, more than anything else, because that was the snack that came to mind.
Yeah. Even fried Mars bar, if I was living in Scotland, that joke.
Oh, that's an evergreen, though.
I had a deep-fried Mars bar the other day.
All right.
I'd be interested to try one, but I've never had one.
If you're ever in Bramall, the Shady Oak pub in Bramall serves you a deep-fried Mars bar.
Yeah.
I think that's probably where I'm coming from, is that I kind of remember when they first became a thing. And I don't actively search for them, so it feels dated to me. But I think it's maybe me going back to nostalgic, remembering when they first became a thing, potentially.
Pub quiz at the Shady Oak in Bramall's dead good as well.
We shall go.
Yes,
sorted.
You know it's me that runs it, right?
Yeah.
You say, oh, who runs that then? Is it a good pub quiz? Who does the questions, Mark?
Me.
I will think about it. We've also got, as I say, within these play words like Cat going, it's him, and it's them. And then you've got, as I say, I'm going to tell his boss, and then he's going to tell their boss. They're going to speak to the DA. Like that, like you're saying, and it's kind of obvious kind of joke stuff, which is great. But it's like, give me a damn pen, all that type of thing.
It's the thing of the running gag through this that they use hackneyed cliches. And that the fact that the episode actually starts with Lister doing that. He was just a bit too short from the sort of Richard Ayoade, oh, he's going to bust my ass and take my badge. Wontons are going to have me, from Garth Marenghi. I enjoyed this because this kind of one of the only things that and it's not even that I dislike it, that I've noticed through this series, is sometimes there's jokes in there for no reason, if you know what I mean. Like they throw a gag in. It's like, okay, that was just there because you've got the gag, and it'll come to me where it is in this episode. But in every episode, there does seem to be a gag that's kind of superfluous to what's actually going on. But in this, it does seem to be really good. And as I say, it's a very densely packed episode for terms of plot. So the fact that they can get in these jokes and it keeps driving the plot along I really enjoy. And we get the debut of Chris Barry's slightly emo wig when it's ruffled up. When we see him being captured, the hair's a bit skew-whiff, and it really does suit him. He looks quite dashing.
The other thing as well within that sort of those jokes is the alternative dimension. It's like, if that's him, then I'm happy with that, and it shows that Rimmer's ego of like, it's not him. He doesn't perceive alternative dimensions people of himself. The clone of Rimmer, and then maybe the seeds from a future Rimmer, and then Cat goes again if he dies, and which is a great line. But Craig Charles smirks quite like in quite wide face angle, going yeah okay, and it kind of like plays quite well in that he's smirking, just looking, going like that. But that was probably one of the ones that's really weird where I don't know if it's in character or not in character.
I feel it's Craig Charles smirking and not Dave Lister smirking at that. I think in this series, there's a few moments where they know that what they're doing is good. And
I feel like it's utterly irrelevant if that was a smirk where he was actually smirking or a smirk where he was playing Lister.
It shows how settled into everything they all are.
Yeah.
And like the relationships they have in these characters. Lister knows that the cat will immediately be well up for the idea of dead Rimmer.
And then he says, about what hostage? I'm being taken hostage. I love his line delivery on it is really good. It's like this way, I'm being taken hostage. It's like, oh, okay, brilliant, fantastic. And then he gives the exposition of like, I've heard what they were doing. They want it. They're exponoids. We find out who they are. And there's a bit of exposition piece there that they wanted the information, the amplifier. It's an amplifier for a temporal transporter, so a time transporter as such. And they want to go back to the past to change the present. And then we get, as you say, the hackneyed old cliche kind of comment comes in. So that's the beginning, the opening, and the setup for the rest of the episode.
I love how quite smart this was. You could have had the whole episode be, how have they got hold of Rimmer and what's going on? But no, you solve it in the first 3 minutes because it is future Rimmer, because they capture him as they give him back. You kind of solve that. It's all the wibbly wobbly, timey wimey kind of stuff, but it's quite fun that they capture Rimmer to give back Rimmer, which is how Rimmer knows what's going on because he's been the Rimmer that's just been captured. I really liked it, and it's simple enough, but if you didn't get it, it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? I also like the little joke about when they put him on hold. He's got the mute microphone that we've all seen when we're doing the Zoom calls and things like that. And he's just staring at them.
Going back to the past to change the present, they do decide to slip through the time stream, at which point, he's basically, we've got to go back and repair whatever damage they've done. Oh, sorry, that's Star Trek First Contacts again, I apologize. And then they time surf down the slipstream and end up back on Earth again.
We've kind of jumped over what the MacGuffin is, which is the
MacGuffin?
Well, yes, but it's they want
the casket of Cronus.
The casket of Cronus, which is underneath their pool table. And I like the fact we've never encountered the casket of Cronus before. It's something that happened in an unaired adventure. And the fact that they lie and they try and be honorable about it and say, oh, it contains the essence of 4 of 20 or whatever they were called, and they want it back, and it turns out they're just massive great liars.
And the fact that Cronus is the homeworld of the Klingon Empire.
Is it?
Yes.
I thought the Klingon Empire's planet was called Klingon.
No, Cronus.
Yeah.
Well, Cronus might have been the moon, actually. Oh, no, it was the homeworld. Yeah, Cronus is the homeworld. It was in Star Trek 6, the Undiscovered Country.
Far be it from me to not know the reference from the one with the bell-bottomed uniform trousers.
Star Trek 6 is one of the best Star Trek films of all time.
Let's talk about Star Trek. Why did they get the Klingons and make them look different and not have the veiny heads in Star Trek Discovery? I stopped watching it because the main character was fundamentally unlikable. But I would like to know why the Klingons didn't look like Klingons.
They did have an explanation, but I can't remember.
So the original series had the Klingons without any ridges at all. And this is where people are going to shout at me with Star Trek fans because I might get this slightly wrong. So obviously in TNG, they had the wharf ridges.
The Cornish pasty.
Yeah.
They look like Klingons.
In Star Trek Enterprise, they look like the Klingons we know. But in Star Trek Enterprise, there's a few episodes about this disease that made some of them look human and made them have the no ridges. And these Klingons are different factions of different families that were eventually not our kind of species of Klingon. They're kind of not a subspecies, but kind of a relative of that. So they are Klingons, but they're different houses, and different houses have a different kind of look or ridge or thing, but they are still
They're the
same,
Care Bear cousins of the Klingon race, Mark.
basically.
Right.
Yeah.
But the best thing about them is that they all came from Enterprise, then they've got faith of the heart.
And ironically, Star Trek Discovery Season 1 with the Klingons, in retrospect, is probably one of the best seasons of Star Trek Discovery. So, it has a very up and down history, does Star Trek Discovery.
She is just unlikable. What's her name's Michael as well?
Michael
Which
Burnham.
confused me.
Michael Burnham. Sonequa Martin Green is an amazing actress. She's amazing in Walking Dead. She's just not given the material.
And then Picard killed it stone dead.
I quite liked Picard.
Everybody liked Picard.
And if you'd like to hear some comments on Star Trek Picard, then go over to Shipwrecked and Comatose that cover Star Trek Picard. No,
They
sorry,
do.
that's the wrong way around. Yes.
Very good.
I'm going all timey-wimey. I'm not quite sure what podcast I'm on. This is
You
the
did a
crossover
funny.
event of the history of the world.
Is
Suddenly
it?
feel the urge to talk about puppets.
Okay. Can we substream back to Earth then, please? Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Not go
Is
back
it
to
Earth? Is it Earth? That's the thing.
It kind of
when-
has to be, doesn't it? But that was going to be one of my questions, actually. So if
Yeah.
it is Earth,
Yeah.
1920s Earth, Prohibition, they don't have Prohibition because the tech ban.
Yep.
So they get to 1952, which is when this is.
Yeah.
So in 1952, they then leave. They do change. The timeline's already changed. They haven't got rid of the Borg. You know, they haven't done what Star Trek First Contact did, because Star Trek First Contact basically, you know, they fought off the Borg. It could be hidden in history, you know,
Yeah.
and it does because Enterprise is part of that. And, you know, you do see a Borg in Enterprise and whatever, but it's hidden in history and it's still canon.
Yeah.
This episode means that all happened. So Prohibition didn't happen in the 20s. There was a tech ban to the 50s.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously now you've got the 3 million year buffer of it kind of doesn't matter. But the problem with a lot of the time travel stuff I've always maintained in any sci-fi is whenever we see it, it's already been done. And I always maintain
You're the
someone's
what
got-
happened.
Yeah.
Okay.
I always maintain somebody's got to do it first. We can't do the Bill and Ted game of imagine what would happen if we did this. Someone's got to do it first. And I think with this is the first time that this has occurred. So we haven't really found out about it yet in the history. And Lister's never mentioned it in the history of, well, Lister might not mention it because of he didn't care about history when he was growing up, but that this would be the first time that I keep forgetting their name. What are they called again? Expanoids.
Expanoids. Yeah.
Keep going.
Ooh,
Yeah.
ooh. What if this was the origin story for Talkie Toaster?
Oh, yes.
Maybe they helped because it was done underground for so long that, you know, because we saw a toaster get smashed to smithereens.
Yeah.
They had to redesign the toaster, and eventually Talkie Toaster was born from it.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Starlight Ballroom. Hey.
Shipwrecked and Comatose. We are on a Red Dwarf podcast called Shipwrecked and Comatose.
I've got faith, faith of the heart.
Oh, dear. Yeah, so
Been
anyway.
a long road getting from there to here. Been a long journey. But my
forget
heart is
where
playing,
you're
yeah,
coming from.
American singing.
Russell Watson's from Manchester, wasn't he?
Honestly, best Star Trek theme ever. Oh,
Did you like
best Star Trek series.
Did
other
you like
than
the
Next
slow
Gen.
version or the faster version?
the original, the slow. The new version was shit, and it made me cross.
Hang on a second. What podcast are we on?
Why are we talking about Star Trek? It's your fault.
Vision.
Oh, God.
We can talk about that. It's dead good.
No,
Although I have been talking about X-Men 97 a lot on Chucky Vision recently, because X-Men 97 is really fucking good as well.
Anyway, so what do you make to the fact that they don't even attempt to reset any timeline there, Mark? Because it is a normal sci-fi trope, isn't it? That, you know, you kind of reset everything, the Back to the Future aspect of it. Then they don't. They just kind of go, here's a look adventure. And to Carl's point, is it even Earth? Is it like an alternative Earth? Could it just be like, you know, they've gone back in time to an alternative dimension, blah, blah, blah. You could easily wash it away if you wanted to.
Well, there's a lot of alternative timelines in Red Dwarf. Yeah. And who are we to assume that our 616 universe, or whatever it is, fucking hell, we're all over the place with the cultural references today, but our universe, our world becomes Red Dwarf. Clearly, it could be that we never have Red Dwarf, or something happens, I don't know, we might get hit by a fucking meteor tomorrow, and that means we never have Red Dwarf. So I think Red Dwarf's an alternative universe where this always happens.
Yeah, I remember seeing this. I can't remember if it was this episode or another one where they managed to go back somewhere, and somebody did a whole thing about, I'm never watching Red Dwarf again because there's no way Lister would leave it. But I think the way that it's we're jumping ahead a bit, but I think the way it's explained in this, and also why they don't really try and reset the timeline, is that they've got 15 minutes to get out of there, otherwise Rimmer and Crichton are dead.
That's what he says at the end. Is Rimmer saying, you could stay here, you could stay here.
Yeah.
And it's like, and then Crichton goes to Rimmer, oh, but he's being really altruistic because you're going to die as well. And Rimmer goes, what? Yeah. And then he does the Kinitawawe, leg it!
Now, that leg it thing, it's clearly a Red Dwarf reference. They have done that as a reference to when they ran away from and friends. And I wonder whether it's deliberately 90s, or it's deliberately Red Dwarf, or it's just written by an old man who thought Leggett was still cool in 2014.
I think it's deliberately Red Dwarf.
Like I've said in many episodes, that there's a lot of self-referential thing moving forward now. I think this is definitely a self-referential.
Yeah, I thought as well. I mean, there's a lot of bits and bobs in this which are callbacks to other things, like Chris Barry's outfit when they get disguised is Sean Connery's outfit from Last Crusade. It just is.
Couldn't tell you, I've never seen it.
Really?
The last good one.
I've tried to watch several different versions of Indiana Jones, and I cannot watch more than 2 minutes of it. It's just so bad.
Last Crusade's a good one, but it is basically Chris Barry's outfit is Sean Connery's outfit from Last Crusade. I thought Crichton's outfit had Jake Bullitt sort of hints to it. I like the callbacks, and we'll see in a couple of other episodes as well that there's callbacks to other things that they've encountered, and also they lay seeds for things upcoming in other episodes. I think it's actually in the next series they lay a seed for something upcoming as well.
Yeah, we'll talk about that next week. But speaking of self-referential, what about Crichton's nipple nuts?
Finally.
Brilliant.
They were all I thought they were going to be cracked up to be. Yeah, definitely.
They were hurt.
Clearly labelled, which is all you can ask for.
They didn't spin, though.
Well, we didn't give him a chance. He was offline at the time. Maybe you have to add things to make them spin. The most impressive bit of it, I thought, was the fact he had the automated
hatches
closed, and Robert Llewellyn could say close hatches, and they did.
It's a moment of comedy genius, actually, like physical comedy, because it's just the way he says, because the way he goes, close hatches.
That whole Crichton in the whole scene was just the funny. The walk to recharge your dynamo and the walk up and down. I was howling. It was great. He's never had a dynamo in him before. He's not a bike with a light on the front of it. It's like, come on. That's just for that gag, but I'm all for it because it was funny as fuck. And that's all down to Robert Llewellyn just not giving a shit about looking like a bell end.
Yeah. The little ticks in his performance in this as well, when he realizes that they're about to lose power and he says, and me, he manages to pitch that really well before he just slumps against. And his acting, which I actually think it probably wouldn't have been that easy to do in the suit, to sort of play dead and throw yourself about a bit in a giant 3D printed tube, essentially, that you're wearing. It was really good fun. The effects are good as well in this, I think. Rimmer's light bee powering off, I think, looked great. And I think that's something they probably couldn't have done as well last season. Series.
A world apart from Back to Earth. When I watched Back to Earth, I was like, this is borderline unwatchable because of the effects and because it wasn't funny. Maybe if it had been funny, I'd have come back. But it wasn't funny and the effects were crap, which is why I didn't go anywhere near these 3 seasons. I wasn't expecting something of this quality, both funny-wise and production-wise, because of Back to Earth.
Yeah. I mean, you get the shot when they land of them walking over a hill and there's like a burnt-out Volkswagen Beetle that's blatantly a still picture that they're just moving with the little shadows green screened on at the top. But it works. This series, that last series as well, but especially this one in 12, seems to be a bit more fight smarter, not harder. So what can we do and how cheaply can we do it without looking crap?
Well, probably because I'll forget this, but it's in the next episode, Samsara. At the beginning of Samsara, when they're doing the Minotaur thing.
Yeah.
And it happened in 10 as well, to be fair, because 10, there was like the way that they designed the set made it feel like you lived in that set. In this one, there's some really clever things, like you can see a shadow of a fan going just by the side of the bunk.
Yep.
You know, little things like that that make it feel real world. And a lot of it will be subconscious that you won't really pick up on it when you're watching it, but it makes it feel lived in because it feels like you're in a 3-dimensional space. And the fans were in 10, you know, you get the 2 fans in, I think the perfect one is Synchronicity, when they're saying, what a weird coincidence. All that section, you can see the 2 fans in it, always going for the Dentibot and stuff. Just makes the world feel lived in, and I think that they do a really good job of that, as well as just the CGI and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I've got it on as we're watching, as I usually do. We're talking about sort of Starbug. In terms of, it's obviously quite a bit different, but in terms of the layout, in terms of where people sit, it doesn't look too different from what it was previously, apart from the back door shut, because presumably there isn't a set behind there into the main room. Fill anything with flashing lights and buttons and it's going to look more impressive. I think it does on this. Like, everything looks way better, even down to the point that the light above the door in Starbug says not alert.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
And again, that's a self-referential thing. Yeah. And that's what I mean by these callbacks, that I will say it now, and by the time you get to the end of 12, you're kind of going, oh, is this too much? And that is for you to decide, Mark, when you get there, whether or not it's too much or not.
3 years in podcast time.
We've planned quite a meticulous year. If everything goes to plan, we'll have season 12 done by the end of 2024.
True. Unless Mark wakes up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat and finds a special that we could do.
There are a lot of specials we could do.
Yes. Red Dwarf Titan airs in September 2024.
Yep.
Is that likely?
No. I haven't heard anything, to be fair. Apart from, obviously, like what they've been talking about, Comic Cons and stuff. There's not... All we're hearing is the Doug stuff. We're not hearing much about Rob Grant stuff at the moment. But that may well change by the time we get here, and I might need to re-edit this, but we'll see. I'll leave it in anyway.
The alternate endings to your sentence now.
Oh, yeah, when we've got the new Doug Red Dwarf special, the hour-and-a-half special that's coming out. It looks really fantastic, the trailer, Mark.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
I can't wait for it to air on the BBC, YouTube,
Disney
Netflix,
Plus.
Disney Plus.
I can't believe Red Dwarf's been bought by Disney. How good is that? And Big Finish are doing an audio drama. I mean, it's unbelievable.
I've had a glimmer of hope about the Big Finish thing recently, which I don't know if you've seen. Audible just released a 6-part continuation of Green Wing.
Interesting.
Apparently it's quite good. And it's written by the same team. It's everybody back.
Are you saying that because they've done a show based on a colour, and it's red next, maybe? I don't know.
Maybe, yeah, maybe.
Let's get back to the episode, because that's what we're here to talk about.
Sort of.
Well, we'll try. Lister's exposition, going back to like Rimmer's exposition, Lister's exposition is the Picard exposition, basically. That's kind of what it is. It's like telling the audience, like, oh, they've come back to the future, but they haven't changed. They haven't changed it. They're here to like just stop us from developing. And that's an interesting thing, because obviously the Borg were sent to actually stop humanity because humanity became a big, mosquito bite in their attack. And they're going to stop it before humanity can spread into the ethos. This is very much a similar thing, but keeping us pulled down in a technological aspect. They're not here to change history. They're here just to stop it from happening. So it's a slightly different variation.
Yeah.
But it is Lister that has to deliver that. Lister doing the Star Trek thing as well. Says, I learned something today in the South Park style. There's those tropes that is still into space in a Star Trek world as well. I'm not too au fait with the end one. And I get what they were trying to do, but it does give us this Sucky, another Sucky, which I think is incredible.
Oh,
For people who are not quite sure what Kurt's saying, he's saying Socky.
Sucky? Sucky? Oh, yeah.
Socky. What a gag.
Apparently
Brilliant.
that was, because this was the last episode to get shot of 11, and the end scene was shot during 12, because they shot everything back to back.
Correct.
And the idea was that they'd go into Christmas, so everyone could finish on time. They shot this new bit in 12, and they shot it very dark because they'd redesigned the sets for 12. That's why it's not a particularly brightly lit scene.
The pizza man, I thought that was good. It says, oh, wrong packet when he gets shot. You mentioned the clothes, and we get the bus, and that's a bit old school Red Dwarf, isn't it, when he says about the stealing the car at the age of 7. He says, why didn't you take a bus? He says, a bus? I was 7-year-old. Going to school, I was off hot wiring. Very classic old school Red Dwarf.
Yes. Lister's criminal past. Although he said he's been on the straight and narrow since at least 9, maybe. And that this was the ad break, wasn't it? Because now obviously we're dealing with ad breaks. So as they drive off with Lister saying it's 8, 9, maybe 11, that's where we went off into the ad break, which I think works. I think they've adapted very well to now being on a channel where you are going to have to take a break.
I never really thought about that.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing with it as well, is it's worked in the way that if you're watching it like we've been watching it, either on like Blu-ray or on the Beeb or on a playback service, you wouldn't notice. It's just a joke between scenes. They finish a scene. Because I think one of the problems with, I know they did it on Back to Earth, and I think they did it in 10 a little bit, is sometimes it was like, oh my God, ad break. And it would be a bit rough. Whereas now they seem
we
to
had that
really...
whole thing in Back to Earth, didn't we? Where someone thought it was a bit weird that they just suddenly froze, and it's like, well, that was potentially the DVD pausing.
Yeah. But in this, they seem to have been like, let's make sure we write it for ad breaks. It's the American way, because if you watch any American show, they take an ad break every 10 minutes, if that. So everything's got to have a sort of like a, oh my God, it's my brother. Long drawn out pause, ad break. You know, it's everything like that.
But there'd only be one ad break in this, even in the States, right?
I don't know, to be fair. I think they've done it just for the UK. And then so imagine if it does get shown in America, it gets shown on PBS,
Of course.
which I don't think has that many ads, or on BBC America, which I don't think does that either. When I was in America watching it, I don't remember them doing ad breaks every few minutes.
I suppose because it is, you're getting paid by the people pledging, don't you, rather than actually needing to. I mean, I suppose they will need some advertisement stuff in there, but I think the model's slightly different potentially. I mean, I'm not no expert on it at all. The signalling technique, which I saw something on the socials the other day actually about this. Right? So somebody was like talking about knocking, and when you knock, you naturally do that, don't you? You naturally like sort of knock like that.
Yeah.
Why do we do that? When Well, because if your hand is down by your side and you knock on a door, you're still going to have the same effect, aren't you?
Oh, you mean why do you hold it in front of your face?
Yeah. Because it is the door knocker. That's the whole point. That's why people do it.
Yes.
Because it's obviously a door knocker.
No, you could just knock at waist level.
It's not a huge amount of effort to raise your arm to knock. I've never really thought about saving energy by knocking low.
Could add up
Are you
though,
sure?
Mark.
I'm not that arthritic.
It was a really well told joke, actually, because I said about the electromagnetic, which is obviously the doorbell, and then it just comes up and knocks on the door. It's like, yeah, that's classic. I like that. I like the build up. I like the actual payoff on that. I think it was done really well and really technical. And we will get into this in the next couple of scenes because we do get to meet Jaime de Gutier shortly. But we're going to talk about the Gigawater first. And to whom said lady? And all that motion. So what do you think to the door scene overall?
I really enjoyed the door scene. I thought it went on a little bit too long, but I did enjoy the door scene. The shot of Danny John Jules when the slide goes open and he's sort of looking over his shoulder, I thought he looked great. Everybody's got something to do in this episode. They all have their moment. I just want to quickly talk, because we're kind of going over it a bit, that how gorgeous the street set looks. And it made me wonder initially if they built that or if it's another, like for gunmen, they went to a ranch. Did they go to a place that was already made up to look like a Prohibition era street? Because there's a lot going on. This must have been a big day for the set dressers.
Because it's still filmed at Pinewood, isn't it?
Yeah. I saw a thing the other day where, I can't remember who it was, showing people around Warner Brothers lots. They just turned the corner and there's a New York street.
Granada Studios, they used to have a New York street originally when Coronation Street was there.
Well, that was it. Part of me wondered, like, is this somewhere off the corner of Coronation Street set? Is this the bit they don't use that they've dressed up for the day? Because there's cobbles, there's all the windows, everything's done, all the signage is done. It's snowing as well. And then you've got everybody's in the right costumes and all that kind of thing. They go into the shop, they go all the way in. So it does make me wonder what the set is. And maybe I haven't seen the behind the scenes of this series. Yeah, and I'm very interested to see whether that's a set they built or it's something they sourced.
And you mentioned their clothes as well. When we did the predictions episodes, both Colin and I assumed this would be in AR. And it's not. And I think I like the fact that they've not made it AR. I think it's at least an attempt at something different, even if it is First Contact. And they look great in those outfits.
I think any excuse to, if you know you can do it well, any excuse to get out there onto a set, because they look great. I mean, I've got it on here, and they walk, when they go looking around, you can see the length of the street behind them. So they could be on location. Some of it could be on location. They could be in Manchester or wherever. When you go back to, say, Series 2, and they're in the hotel, that's the actual hotel that they were staying in, it looks like they used the hotel they were staying in. Whereas this looks like a proper film set, like they've built it and this, that, and the other. Which, again, considering that the budget for this compared to the budget for 2, it's probably smaller than the budget for 2, is just really commendable from a design standpoint.
So, doorway.
Yes.
Listerano, Joseph Lister, who was a British surgeon and medical scientist. He pioneered the antiseptic surgery and preventative healthcare.
Did he have a middle name? Because Lister, no middle name, Listerano is a good name.
It just says Joseph Lister.
I like the fact it's the cat being like, stand back, guys. I know what's going on here. I know what to do. And getting incredibly lucky just because Lister's name is Lister. He could have just said Lister and it would have worked, but he said Listerano, and the guy on the door had to make a bit of a leap to connect the dots, but it worked.
Well, I
Yeah,
like
it's
that
weird.
this did work for the cat because it didn't work when he tried to order Tres Tequila, por favor, in the AI.
It's quite a good episode, apparently. Is that?
It's in the best episode. Of
Oh,
Red
the
Dwarf.
second best episode. That's right. Yeah.
Gunman of the
Yeah.
Apocalypse, the best episode of Red Dwarf.
Okay. Is that the AR one where they go into a game?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's called Streets of Laredo.
Is it? Okay. Is it not where the game Red Dwarf, though? Is it not a game? Back to reality.
No, I don't know what you're talking
Something
about.
like that, yeah.
Don't even remember that episode.
You know, okay.
No.
The lad playing the guy who's manning the door, you get the feeling that is the only character he has played his entire acting career. He does it well, but you get the feeling he's never played anything else.
Well, we do get into the club and we meet Harmony de Goutier, and it's an illicit science club. What did you think to the club?
Loved it. Love the way it looks. It kind of reminded me, for some reason, of the pub from Backwards. I don't know why, because they have to go downstairs to it. But I look the aesthetic of it, but instead of booze, it's science. Just looked so good. They made the white coats look like they fit over the top of like all the peacock dresses and things like that. I loved it. And then when they do the flip, the sort of Batman secret pull book to turn all the walls round, it's so good.
It really is. And as much as it's a funny gag about science being sex, or sex being science, or whatever, it is a remarkable set when you actually think about it.
Everybody in the scene, it doesn't make me wonder how many of them are crew members, especially when it comes to the flipping around of stuff, or of the set designers who are like, do not touch this stuff if you flip this wrong, because it's a hell of a shot, because we see all of it. So for them to do it all is, I can imagine there weren't that many takes of it. If they cocked it up, there'd be a massive redressing to do. But yeah, everybody in this looks, and they look the part as well. Credit to the costume department.
It's obviously very goofy. It's unrealistic, but it does the job. And I quite like the fact it's just like, yeah, all right, we know it's going to be a bit crappy, but it's for the gag.
It's very Dick Tracy.
What do you make to Harmony de Goutier? I think she's the most MVP of this episode. She's incredibly good. Everything she delivers is absolutely incredible. The science she's got to deliver is on the money, double slit experiments, general relativity, everything that she talks about, the Copenhagen interpretation, all of that stuff is brilliant. You know, how dense do you think I am? Well, divide your mass by your volume. It's just one of the best gags ever. I think she's actually the most MVP of this episode, without a doubt.
Yeah, she's brilliant. And I wrote in my notes that this reminds me a lot of Doctor Who, because you would think that Einstein, who turns out to be Bob, would be the focus of the episode, but it's another character that's around the historical figure that becomes more important. She was clever. She was fun. Her delivery, the actor, she's brilliant.
Yeah, she's pretty much the best thing in it. Also, you've got Lucy Cole, I believe it is, or Laurie Cole, who's probably best well known for being, if you're a gamer, the voice of one of the main characters in Overwatch, which is a massive game. She hosts a podcast called Immigrant Jam, where she talks to other entertainers who are from other countries who've moved to America. Her actual speaking voice is not far off Harmony Dubois. She's German, but she seems to have adapted into this almost like 40s Americana style voice with a slight German tinge to it. Her voice is not too far off. She's a stand-up as well.
That makes sense. Even like the blood thing, it's like, oh, the blood's actually 37 degrees and all that kind of thing worked really well. I just think that the whole thing. And then we need to give special mention to Beryl, because I did not know it was Pre for a long time until we started to prepare for this. I just know her as Beryl because she does the Big Bang. When I saw it, I was like, oh my God, that's Pre. I can't believe that's Pre. It's unbelievable to get her back. So I thought that was a nice touch.
Credited as Big Bang Beryl as well.
Hey, I don't do the Big Bang. That's Beryl.
the little interaction with the cat as well. Because the cat, of course, like even now is just horny. And to be fair, that speech she gave about what science she can do was very horny. So after that, if you told that Beryl does the Big Bang, then sure, why not? Maybe not you, Mark, but yeah.
Because no one goes up there. It's like, oh, great line. Great line. Says you had it up there all the time? Yeah, because no one goes up there.
Amazing.
It's good, clean fun because she's very sexy when she's talking about science. We could talk about the Copenhagen technique. Ooh, but yeah, then when it actually comes down to talking of anything sexual, she's like, absolutely not.
When she does talk about, which is, again, one of my favorite moments in this episode, when she starts talking about like sort of Einstein and Edo and Huddison and all that kind of thing. And he talks about, he's got some theory about it, you know, about some pram in a string. I'm like, oh, string theory. And then Kat just goes, pram theory?
It's just, there's a lot of like little, like, you know, 2-word, 3-word jokes that get chipped in and through the series, which are just great. The other one being when they're lambasting Kevin Eldon's character and he said, you are this, a man of distinction. Just Danny John Jules going, a real big spender.
But the thing is as well, they intersperse, that's like, it's a little bit, it's not as obviously as good as Moose, but they intersperse it because they mention he's a highborn at the beginning of the episode. So the fact that they've already mentioned he's a highborn, and then the second time we hear he's a highborn is right when they're on stage, and you get the big spender thing, it's just like perfectly set up. And it's one of those like long form jokes, but it's obviously not as strong as Moose because it is only a 1-word thing, but it's still the same premise. It's still that, you know, set it up early in the episode, pay it off later, which I think works really well.
The thing of they're all in this underground science club, but they can't do anything because they're all theoretical, which must be for them obviously incredibly frustrating. Like they can come up with every idea under the sun, but they can't put it into practice.
As someone who's into the sciences anyway, it hits a little bit different now that Oppenheimer's out, because that kind of like really showcases that in the film itself about him being all theoretical. He's not good with the numbers. He just knows, he just feels it. Oppenheimer lived that, and he needed the people around him, the actual people who actually did the science to actually make it happen. So that hits a little bit different when you're watching something as big as Oppenheimer was. You know, being a $1 billion movie. When Rimmer goes to the pram and sees what we think is Einstein at this moment in time, and he goes, oh, I love the sciences, the Bunsen burners. He starts just like sort of talking in random science terms, Einstein. And in my head, I'm thinking to myself, is that a little bit of play of fandom? This is what it sounds like from the other side. Like if Einstein's seen somebody who's just talking about like science things in year 7 compared to like a fan going up and saying like, I saw you in such and such, and like, well, I don't really want to, you know, it's a little bit of that going on.
Loved you in Prince Among Men.
Oh no.
Yeah, exactly. That's probably Chris Barry's reaction. The guy who plays Einstein / Bob, the bum. I know I've seen him in a lot of stuff, but I'm sure this is not the first time he's played Einstein.
He's great. And the complete lack of dignity of Einstein.
Yeah.
And then we realize he's Bob the bum. It's funny.
The way it's revealed, the delivery of the line of you're not going to get much out of him, why it's not because he ain't Einstein. There's a little bit as well of as they're walking away back to the club, and I'm sure this is improv between the actor and Robert Llewellyn.
Don't, because it's one of my favorite moments of the episode.
Yeah. Don't touch my string. I'm not going to touch your string.
It's your string. I won't touch your string. I won't touch your string. It's your string.
As the cat fanatic, I'd like to point out that the tap dance was great. Didn't last long enough.
No. I like the fact you don't see his feet, because you don't need to see his feet, because you know it's Danny John Jules.
I like the fact you don't see Blue Midget behind him.
I mean, I'd quite like Blue Midget to come back and do some tap dancing. That'd be good.
I'd kind of liked in this episode, after they took Bob away, to have Einstein appear for a second and go, where's my pram?
Brilliant.
That would have been great. When they're saying, they've been doing science section, looking at Crichton. It said, what's happened to you? I went bobbing for apples in a cement mix. You don't often hear Crichton referring to himself.
No.
He said, you do sometimes get it, don't you? He says, oh, well, because my head looks like this and such. It's just the way it's like, okay, it's a classic like head joke. Fantastic.
The look on his face as well is like, I don't want to say this about myself, but I know it's how I'm going to get out of this situation.
The whole scene's great, though. They defeat the simulants is by making them bitch at each other. It's just brilliant.
It's like, ooh. The face he pulls just makes it. It's just, no, you've been slugging me off behind your back, my back. He's been slugging you off, man. He's been slugging you off.
The fact it's revealed that they were in a relationship as well. And they were going through a bad patch, and that's why he did it. I Mandela affected myself in this. I really had it in my head that Kevin Eldon went, oh, you bitch.
You're no better than 3 of 63.
It's so good.
The delivery of, did somebody say my name?
Oh, no, sorry. He is 363, isn't it? It's 18 of 241.
Yeah.
I think the other one's something of 24.
Yeah.
And then you've got like, you know, going bad patch, you're no better than 18 of 241.
Oof. I'm a large batch. I just love it when there's something where you expect them to sound robotic or alien-like or prim and proper, and then they do something like did somebody say my name? And it's like, do you remember when we were going through that bad patch?
It's just great.
And I think this is probably a good time to talk about the hackneyed cliches, because you've got, what have we got? We've got We Meet Again. And, when you know, we're not so different, you and I. And we are the good guys here. Yeah. It's just like every single cliche. There's another one earlier in the episode, and I can't remember what the one early in the episode is. It's just brilliant that the fact that they actually are using those moments.
Yeah.
And that hackneyed cliche, as I say, it's amazing. We're the good guys here.
I really loved the fact that they refer to the scientists as white coats. Just in that kind of historical, this is what we're calling the rebels, the white coats. I just liked that for some reason. I think maybe because I'm a Firefly fan.
Yeah. I was going to say it reminds me of White Hats from Buffy. It's rare that Red Dwarf becomes as explicitly parody as this, but they are just taking the Borg and making them ridiculous in this scene. And it's brilliant. And it is pure parody.
And the first, to my knowledge, gay simulants. This is the first non-heterosexual stimulants? No,
stimulants.
Non-heterosexual stimulants Ovaltine.
Is it the first instance of queerness?
Yeah.
I mean, you could argue quite strongly that a queer reading of Crichton is that he's asexual. Absolutely, you could. But this is explicit queerness rather than implicit. I can't think of another queer character that is explicitly queer.
Not in Red Dwarf, no.
Even in 7, Kachansky was playing off that, not actually using it. He was using it to get...
Yeah. What was his name? Was it Gay Bob? No.
Bent Bob.
Bent Bob.
Yeah. It was Lister and get Bent Bob, wasn't it? But that was just to get his mind off it. They get found out because Lister's drinking out of an Erlenmeyer flask.
Brilliant.
Which was great, and I loved his reaction to that. And they managed to obviously get the Cronus back, and then it's the 15 minutes you need to scram, and they wipe out all the mechs. And that, effectively, there's some of us, the PMT as well.
Yeah, brilliant joke. Brilliant joke.
I've been hit by one of those PMTs.
I mean, the thing is, that gag is a malaprop. Whereas, if we take a look back at Last Christmas, the flying tampons, I don't think this is misogynistic or horrible. It's just a malaprop. And it's a funny malaprop because of what he's got it wrong.
Yeah.
Whereas, what was that called? The Christmas special that never got made?
Oh, the one I had no interest in doing and didn't sound exactly enthusiastic when I was on the podcast.
Dropship Project.
Yeah. That was probably one of my hardest podcasting moments in my career. In my podcasting career, that was probably one of the hardest episodes I've ever had to do. Ooh. Yeah, anything else then, chaps, before we finish for today?
We've got this scene at the end where they're trying to do the message, which we've talked about before, but I love this episode. I really do. I've watched it twice today. I've got it on now as we're talking about, just to remind me of things. And I just love it. It's a 25, 26-minute movie. If you could have... There's a few episodes in these series where if instead of the Promised Land, you wanted to make a movie, like an hour-and-a-half TV movie out of them, you could.
That's a very good point.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I think it's the purest parody we've ever seen in Red Dwarf. And I love that they've nodded towards the whole Red Dwarf is intrinsically linked to Star Trek and always has been, and just gone all in on the parody of Star Trek. And I'm here for it. It's a brilliant episode. And I don't think it's mean in its parody. I just think it's funny and silly and really works.
Yeah. I think as well, the moment at the end where Rimmer's telling Lister, stay here. He genuinely means it. You know, you don't have to be on your own. And then the fact that he won't because he doesn't want to lose Crichton is really sweet. And it's only when Rimmer realizes that he's basically sacrificing himself and then the Rimmer kicks in, that moment ends.
Which I suppose brings the next point up, isn't it? Because in the last episode, he's kind of... I think there's an argument to said that he's grown since then, the beginning, and have we reset Rimmer a little bit? But I would argue there was not that sacrifice element to him, but he was more empathetic than he normally is.
Yeah.
So I definitely feel that there's more to that. And Rimmer's always going to be Rimmer. So
Rimmer got a Rimmer.
Yeah. He's got a rim. Rim's got a rim.
Exactly.
Well,
Mr. Rimmer. We will get there.
I'm looking forward to that episode.
Nothing else, chaps? Anything else? I think the swing music was really good. I thought that some of the tunes were quite decent, good for the timepiece and stuff like that. It was very 20s, even though it was 50s, but they were saying they were held in the 20s. So I thought that worked really well.
I genuinely really loved this episode.
It's a great one.
Yeah. And as a Star Trek fan, and as Star Trek First Contact is one of my favourite Star Trek movies, I would say Star Trek 6 and First Contact are my two favourite movies. I know Rafa Khan is kind of always up there as people's favourite Star Trek movie. My first two are Undiscovered Country and First Contact.
Mine's Voyage Home.
Okay.
Yeah. So
the fact that, like you say, Mark, with the parody aspect of it, I actually really like it for it, and I think it's not trying to be disingenuous. Polymorph, for example, is like a kind of a mix between the Thing and Aliens, isn't it, really? But it's not as full on as this is, as like an obvious kind of rip-off.
Yeah.
And it's a rip-off in a loving way, and I think that's the best way of describing it. I think it works really effectively.
Obviously, we're nerds. I think if we weren't as entangled into what we like as much as we were, if you went, that's the Borg. If you don't know who the Borg is, you wouldn't think. You'd just be like, oh no, they're killer android things.
Yeah.
But I think because obviously we are, studly nerds, that we would recognize it, but maybe other people wouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, it's the fact that it is First Contact. The fact that they follow him through the time stream, that happens in Star Trek First Contact. The fact that they go back in time before the ship, and change history and stuff like that. That it is these Exmonoids, these kind of robots. They have got like 18 of 241, which is clearly, without any, even someone who might have a passing interest in, say, Star Trek and has seen Voyager would know, oh, that must be a Borg thing because of 7 of 9. You know what I mean? Because 7 of 9 was such a big character. So you're always going to have that aspect to it. So I think it works, and it works really well.
Definitely.
So that is it for the beginning of season 11. Carl, you're going to be back with us next week.
I am.
Where can people find you, Carl?
People can find me
Grinder.
You can find me at all over, but the best place to get me at the moment is I'm really utilizing my link tree. I am getting quite a few bookings at the moment as a ring announcer. working my way around the country, and on there is the list of all the places you can find me and links to this very podcast and all the socials. So if you go on to linktr.ee or whichever way around it is, / I am Mr. Carl, pretty much everything you're going to need is there. Come out and see me at a show. I'm good fun.
Excellent. We can find me and all my podcasts, including the Shipwrecked and Comatose, Make It So, a Star Trek podcast, on Linktree as well, / rmuldrick, RMULDRAKE. It has all the links to all the available things that I do. Mark, can you tell us about your Linktree?
I haven't got a fucking Linktree.
Make your
I also have podcasts, and I'm also a ring announcer. I've been doing both of those things for fucking ages. You know all that. At Mark Adams HC on Twitter. That's the only place I bother with. I'm terrible at Instagram. I never bother with Facebook. And I've only got one active podcast.
What about Bramall? Can we find you in Bramall?
You can. I've got pub quiz in Bramall, pub quiz in Stretford as well, head bar in Stretford. And I've got a pub quiz in New Mills as well. So yeah, but all of this shit's on my Twitter, at Mark Adams HC.
Excellent.
Don't need a fucking Linktree.
I've got lots of events, Mark. I've got to put them all in and put the logo
I've got
on.
lots of events. I put them all on Twitter.
Okay, chaps, let's go. Until next time, remember, as always,
Faith of the heart, call me Beryl.
What? That was horribly out of tune.
Shipwrecked and Comatose is a podcast brought to you by the Film Stories Podcast Network.
The show was created and produced by Mark Adams and Kurt North.
The logo was designed by Carl Bryan, and the theme tune was composed and performed by me, Colin Jackson Brown.
I suppose I'm here as well. Matt Latham.
Follow us on Twitter at Red Dwarf Pod and follow the network on Twitter at Film Stories.
My